Thank you so much, Darci Hannah, for being on the Magic of Cozy's podcast with us today.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're
We've been trying to do this for a couple months now, and we finally made it happen. So thank you.
yes,
It's a pleasure to
you're
be here.
welcome. So, can you tell us about your journey into writing cozy mysteries centered around ghosts and hauntings?
This is kind of a meandering, a meandering journey for me. Um, and I tell people this, and it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. But I started writing historical fiction, and I didn't even know what a cozy mystery was. And so I loved history, and I loved, like, when I was younger, reading gothic-y, maybe like romances set in history, big epicals. And so when I started writing, I never really knew I wanted to be a writer until I had two little boys and I was pregnant with another, and my life was crazy and I was getting no sleep. And one day I'm like, hey, I'll just write a novel. And that's kind of how it started. I enjoyed writing, but I never considered writing a novel. And I enjoyed reading, of course. I've just been a big reader all my life. So I started out in historical fiction, which was a long journey for me. Finally got two books published with Ballantine Books Random House. Was super excited about that. So they were published in like 2010 and 2011. And they had, whenever I approach a subject, they were very fun, like adventures. They were Scottish historical fiction. And there's always a little touch of a supernatural paranormal element in there, but I didn't want the reader to know it until it appeared, right? So that was kind of something I really enjoy, because in my life, I don't know why I do this, but I'm one of these people who I just have this, I'm very curious about mysteries that can't be solved, right? So, like, I would say ghosts. Um, I just love learning about things like that too. Not on the darker side of it, but like one of my themes with the Angel of Blythe Hall, which was the first mystery I wrote was about a girl who gets sent to the lighthouse in Cape Wrath. And so it's kind of an interesting gothic tale a little bit about that. The second one was set in Scotland in 1492, but it was kind of centered around the cult of angels. So it had some, like, it was a very, when I wrote that book and I started doing research on it, it was a little bit life changing for me, understanding some of that stuff and the religious texts around it. So had those two books published, and then they don't say anything when you're an author, but I don't think I sold enough to get another shot. And you don't know this because it took me 150 rejections to find my agent who then could sell that book pretty quickly. So I was like, oh, thank God I finally did it. It was years, it was a journey. I think I started writing in my 30s. I did not get published until I was in my 40s. Um, and at that time, my kids had seen me gather, like I would do this when they were at school or, whatever, and they would see me gather all these rejection letters. Well, two books into it, they asked me to write a third, and then they just kind of said nothing. And so I had this third book written, and my agent finally one day said, oh, well, I just don't have the connections to sell what you write right now. So just write a mystery. You should, try genre fiction. And she just said it so backhanded. And I thought, mystery? Like, what? I love reading mysteries, but the mysteries that I read, I don't like reading gory stuff. I don't like reading stuff that's very disturbing. So the mysteries that I read were cozy mysteries, although I didn't know what a cozy mystery was. And I used to read an author called M.C. Beaton. It was a classic British cozy set in, one of them was set in Scotland and one of them was set in the Cotswolds, which I just thought was the most charming little place. And so I thought, oh, and I like the humor. I always love to have humor in my books. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to write something very different from my historical fiction. I'm going to make it fun. I'm going to set it in the most charming place I know. And I ended up writing a cozy mystery series, which I didn't know. I wrote a cozy mystery, didn't know I wrote a cozy mystery, but I set it in a town called, or a place called Door County, Wisconsin, which is a very charming part of the Midwest. Um, and so my agent read it, didn't like it, then I had to find another agent because I'm like, I'll either sell a historical fiction or one of these things that I wrote. I don't know what to do. And so it was kind of up to fate, right? So I kind of when that I found this other agent who was wonderful, and she really centered it on the cozies, and she was the one that told me. She said, you wrote a cozy mystery, and I didn't know that. I even had a punny title for it. I call it Par for the Corpse, because I thought that was funny, and I set it on a golf course, which I quickly learned that she's like, yeah, you can't set it on a golf course. Golf is a pursuit, a leisure time pursuit, and leisure time pursuits don't sell. So she asked me if I could have another hook. And so I'm like, oh, what do you mean by hook? I basically, this conversation I have with this lovely agent who's now my agent told me what I had written and that I'd written a cozy mystery, and to really hone it in, would I be willing to do these things to it? And she, we ended up, yeah, I totally ended up doing that. And I ended up selecting, I said, I set it on it's a very cherry centric thing. I have cherries in there. I could set it on a cherry orchard. And she Googled cherry, and she's like, yeah, nobody's writing about cherries. Why don't you do that? And so that's how my first series, so this is weird too. So it came out, and it was published by a publisher called Midnight Ink. And it was supposed to be a 3-book series. And so the first one was Cherry Scones and Broken Bone. No, Cherry Pies and Deadly Lies, Cherry Scones and Broken Bones. And the third one I'd started writing, and I wanted that to be my haunted lighthouse because I have a thing for lighthouses. I always have them in my stories, and I don't know why. Probably because I visit them a lot. And I just feel like they're, again, like if you're going to look at something that's very mysterious or kind of gothic-y, it's like these lonely, forlorn places, and lighthouses always have these crazy histories. So anyhow, my agent called me as I was working on the outline for that, or just writing it, and she's like, Midnight Ink is closing, and so I only got 2 books with them. And at that time, she's like, you got to think of something else. And I was like, okay. And that was so it's so my writing career is like 2 historical fiction out, 2 cozy mysteries out. And I was like, maybe this isn't for me. So I thought, well, I'll give it one more shot. And I ended up writing the Beacon Bakeshop Mystery Series, which was my it was my second cozy mystery series, but it was actually with a wonderful company called Kensington Publishing. They're wonderful at handling and producing and promoting cozy mysteries. And I set it in Michigan, where I now live. And I just thought, it was just really fun to write about a lighthouse about a woman who buys a lighthouse, opens up a bakery in it, and then the lighthouse. And this is background from every lighthouse I visit. I always ask the person who's taking me around, like, who's still here? And they're like, what do you mean? It's decommissioned. And what I mean is, like, I want to know the history. I want to know, if there's a ghost story associated with this, because every old place that has had people living in there or working in there, they always seem to have a story about, oh, maybe late at night I hear something, or some people do. And so a lot of lighthouses did. And one of the themes was that there was always like a keeper that was still on duty, or we could still hear this guy, or I thought that was fascinating. So I used a lot of Michigan lighthouse lore in creating the Beacon Bakeshop Mystery Series, although it's really about a woman who owns a bakery. So my roundabout, that's a longer answer than you probably were looking for, but my roundabout way was, I had no idea I'd written in a cozy mystery until I stumbled upon it. And I'm so happy I did, because again, I feel like this is fate.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Just kind of um, you wrote it without even realizing. and
Yes.
and you're good, and they're really good. And it's what I think what's interesting about that is that I've talked to a lot of authors where we talk about the setup of a cozy, and cozy readers are very they're paying very good close attention, and cozies have a cadence to them. And if that cadence is off, whether it's the murder's too soon, the murder's too late, or whatever it is, we as readers will call you out and be like, what? Why is this like this? So to have written a cozy like by accident, I think is really telling that this is really your path. And of course, you read them, so you knew how to write one without realizing you did.
Yeah,
But that's a
thank
really great
you.
story.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's wild, and I don't, I kind of approach it like a historical fiction writer writing a mystery. And so I think for me that works is I don't overthink it too much. But it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, it's been like, there's days where I'm like, why am I murdering people? But then, I started writing, and I think the book that you read was Fatal Feast at Bramsford Manor.
Hmm.
That was a second series that Kensington asked me to write, and that has a whole different story behind it. So that's I'm very grateful to get to do that too.
Yeah. And so, speaking of that series, how do you ensure ghostly elements of hauntings, apparitions, and the eerie settings and all of that enhance the mystery plot rather than overshadowing it?
Well, I think there's a very fine line, and so when when I was asked to write another series, I pitched two normal series, what I would consider like classical cozy mysteries, and I love to write food. That's like, I don't know why, I just love baking and cooking. And so I had a younger brother, and he was so funny because he was one of his hobbies was ghost hunting, and he just like would call me and he'd tell me these crazy because I had moved to Michigan, he had moved to New York or something, and his wife was a big foodie, like I mean a good like high level foodie. She would design. I think celebrity chef kitchens, right? So they were kind of moving around this like foodie world. I was just cooking for my family. But my brother would do these ghost huntings and he'd be like, oh, you've got to hear this. Or he'd tell me these crazy stories. And one day I said, he would make me watch those terrible ghost shows on TV, like, on cable. Every channel has one. And called him one day, and I was in between my historical fiction, and I was trying to figure out my life. He moved out for his wife's job, and he was, just job hunting. But ghost hunting, the first thing he did was join a Manhattan paranormal ghost hunting team or something like that. And I said, you know what? You know what channel doesn't have a ghost show on it? I go, Food Network. Why don't we? And so this is back in my historical days. There's a Celtic tradition uh, where they have a dumb supper during something called Samhain, where they want to keep all the evil spirits that roam the earth. They feel like the day between October 31st and November 1st, the veil between the living and the dead is the thinnest. And so they would try to keep out the evil and invite all their beloved departed loved ones, and they would use this big feast and set it place at the table for them. And I thought, reading this years and years ago, I thought that was, wow, that's a great tradition. It's very symbolic. They're very close to their spiritual ancestors. Interesting. But anyhow, so I pitched it as Food and Spirits to my brother, and we're going to pitch it as a reality TV show. And then he got a job, and I wrote a cozy mystery. Years later, he had passed away in 2020. And I pitched this in probably 2022, 2021. And I thought I was just going to pitch this idea and write it up as a cozy mystery, thinking I don't even know how to do this because it's confusing. Food, ghost hunting, location, cozy mystery, murder, had a lot of different elements, but I just wrote it up as a really funny pitch, along with these other normal fun pitches. And of course, I get a call and they wanted Food and Spirits. So that's kind of how it happened. It was inspired by my brother. It's been a nice journey because I do feel like spiritually close to him still, even though he's passed. And this is like a journey we take together in that weird sort of way. So putting in the elements, I will say I am open to the possibility of ghosts. I read a lot, but I'm more on the spiritual spectrum of things where I look at things and I don't ever want to have like a darker experience. I would never go into a haunted home with a camera and shake things up. Um, I feel like there should be a lighter touch. So for me, the focus is on like the legend at the house, right? So in Bramsford Manor, there's this legend, and I came across. I was actually looking for a white lady legend I had heard in white lady haunting in Ireland, and I just googled white lady, and I kept getting this Mistletoe Bride legend. And when I read the legend, I was like, oh, that is traumatic and heart wrenching. I am going to write a story around it because it is a pretty, well known legend, I think, in the UK about a woman, the Mistletoe Bride, who gets married. I think it was in the 1700s at this manor, and she proposes before, after they got married on Christmas Day, and then before they, she and her new husband, it went to the bridal suite. She proposed a game of hide and seek, got a 5 minute head start, and they never found her again. And so rumors abounded. I'm sure you would, you're invited to a wedding. The bride wants you to play hide and seek, and then she's nowhere around. You just naturally assume she skipped out. She had some regrets, right? 50 years later, her husband, this is a legend now, is up in one of the many attics of this big manor home that he lives in, and sees this chest that has a carving of a mistletoe on it, and he opens it up, and he finds the remains of this wife from 50 years ago. So she's, still in her wedding dress with her bridal wreath. And it's a very, bone chilling tale. And there's a few manor homes in the UK that actually claim to have this chest. I think it exists still. At least there are pictures of it on the internet. So anyhow, for me, it was more about telling this haunting tale. And then I thought I have to add, like a ghost hunt in there. And then I've watched enough of these ridiculous ghost hunts to kind of pepper in those elements, and then try to add a little twist. Like when they go to resolve the murder, there's a murder always, and then they resolve that, and then they resolve, the lingering spirit within these manor homes. So I feel I don't love monsters or something that's like magical in a way. I don't know if I could ever write a book where somebody had magical powers. For me, it's always something like it's the ultimate mystery, right? What is this? And delving into these legends, and a ghost. Technically, there's many different things, but it's usually some earthbound spirit that had like a trauma. They maybe sometimes they die and they don't know they die. I don't know. There's a lot of really interesting things I've read about these things, and I formulate my own opinion on that. But that's kind of, I try to treat it respectfully and lightly, and then also put just a heavy dose of fiction in there too. So, I hope that answered your question.
No, it absolutely did. What advice would you give to aspiring authors interested in writing paranormal cozy mysteries?
Oh, that's a good one. So if they're interested in paranormal cozy mysteries, I would say they already have a really good imagination, and they've read and they've delved into what their interest. And so I would say, like, just follow your interest. If you want to write a mystery, a cozy mystery, if you've read them, I think the best teacher is to read them. But one of the most important things is, if you have an idea for a novel and you want to pepper in those elements, start writing that novel. And I think it's a practice. Like, my first novel I wrote was a sweeping 18th century epic that was 1,000 pages. It did not get published, obviously, because it was too long, and I wrote something smaller. But that 1,000 pages taught me how to write a story. So the practice of writing a story, writing your story, and how you would like to see that story unfold is the most important thing. So just have the will and the discipline, and just be excited to do it. Don't criticize yourself, just tell your story.
Some great advice. So, as we know, this podcast is called The Magic of Cozies, and it's sort of a little play on words. We do talk about paranormal cozies that have magic, that have ghosts, that have all sorts of those sort of elements. So, with that said, what is your definition of magic?
See, that's such a good question, because I think, there's the sleight of hand magic that we're all like, transfixed by. But for me, it's like anything that sparks awe, right? So, like, there's magic every day around us. So I'm a big outdoor person. I love taking walks in the woods with my dogs. And if you just like sit and look at things and how, even a leaf, a bud turning into a flower that turns into an apple, like you're just like, how does that happen? That's magic. Um, and then when you're writing, like, so I think if you open your senses to it, there's magic that happens every day in your life all the time. And it might not be, sleight of hand magic, but it inspires you to just take a breath, sit back and be like, how does that happen? Like just kind of something of awe, looking for, just things that personally bring you that, kind of wonder, I think. Um, there's, for me, that's the best kind of magic. And then when I sit down and write, I might not know where I'm going, but I trust that I just put a lot of trust in, like, the powers that be. And I am surprised at the end of the day that I have a good chapter. Do you know what I mean? So I like, I think it, but I try not to I don't like, I guess what I'm saying is I don't, I don't worry about how am I going to do this? How am I going to get this to make sense? How am I going to, your brain will figure that out. We have storytelling brains. People like learn through story. We love stories. We watch stories. So innately, we know how to tell stories. And that is magic to me. It's like that I can do this, and people can read it and it actually makes sense for them and they enjoy it. That's the ultimate magic for me. That brings me the ultimate amount of awe. So,
That is great. If you could encounter a famous or historic ghost, who would it be and why?
so this is a hard one because there's so many interesting ones. But so for me, this is like a little more personal, and it's when I was writing historical fiction, I read a lot of books, and one author, how you have an author that just speaks to you sometimes, and it was a woman who had passed away. Her name was Dorothy Dunnett, and she was a Scottish historical fiction author that wrote in such incredible detail of I think it was 15th century Scotland and the world. It was incredible, and I remember just reading her books and being so blown away by them, and wishing that I had the opportunity to have met her. And one day, this is the wildest thing. I was I don't know. Do you know what a lucid dream is?
Mhm.
So one day I was dreaming and I was working on this book called Angel of Blythe Hall, and I was thinking of Dorothy Dunnett and her brilliant work, um and I had this lucid dream where I was in Scotland in her home. And whenever I do this, I've had these a few times in my life, and if you ever have a lucid dream, you remember it in incredible detail, and that's how you know you're doing that. And there's usually another person when I'm dreaming. There's usually a presence that I would think is like almost like an angel visit, because it's always usually a woman, but they're not, their presence is not known. So this Dorothy Donnett lady, we were having tea, and she brought me over to this curio cabinet and had all these beautiful figurines of historical things in it. And I remember her telling me, she's like, I want you to select something, and whatever you select, I will remember you by. And I was just like, oh, Dorothy Donna is telling me these things. And so I was just about to make my selection, and my husband woke me up. And I go, what? And I was like the craziest.
Oh,
It was like such a like the craziest opportunity, right? So I believe like I was contacting this lady that whatever. Um, and it was so interesting. And he goes, I thought you were awake. He goes, you were smiling. I'm like, oh, I think I was having tea with Dorothy Dunnett. Like, and I couldn't quite explain to him what was going on in that. But to me, I found her as an author a very fascinating person, and I would love the chance to go back to that tea room and try it again. So
oh,
it's weird. It's weird. Focus on your hand, and at some point when you're dreaming, you're going to look at your hand and know that you're dreaming. It was so weird. It was such an interesting thing.
interesting.
But I think there's a way you can train yourself to do this. This has happened maybe 3 times in my life. And it's usually somebody who's passed who
Mhm.
comes to talk to you or visit you, and you feel like everything makes sense in the dream, unlike every dream that you have other than that. So
Mhm.
it's very, to me, I'm fascinated by it. And I never expected it, but you remember them and you will have one. So be like, oh, so when you focus on something or somebody that you love so much, maybe has passed, um, that's sometimes a way that I use that a lot. I've been using that a lot, that method of connecting to a ghost through dream in the Beacon Bakeshop series, because I'm starting to move my protagonist away from, I think the last one I wrote, she's away from the lighthouse. And for her, like, the captain always, my ghost is Captain Willie Riggs, and he warns her of danger. And he's kind of a character, but he's starting to appear in that way because it's just interesting. I don't know, but it's happened to me a few times, and they're great experiences, but you're like, what the heck was that?
So, what is your favorite way to get cozy with a book?
Oh, I love my I tend to read most of my fun fiction at night. I don't say wait, but I love it if I have a day where I don't have to do anything, which is very rare, as you know. Like reading sometimes can be hard to fit in, but cup of coffee in the morning or in the evening, I'll cut a glass of wine and just nobody. I don't want to be bothered, which is also hard. My dogs will snuggle with me. I have a couch that is perfect that I can. It's like in a little sunroom that it's away from the other part of the house. But yeah, I love it. Just such a special time when you get that quiet time with a book, and it's a good book. So yeah, so it always has to either be coffee or white wine. Yeah.
And what are you reading right now? Any book recommendations for our listeners?
So, there's so many great books. How to choose just one. So I just finished the Thursday Murder Club. Have you
Hmm.
ever read that? I
I
love
have
that.
not. It's on my TBR, but I have not gone to it
Well,
yet.
I bought it a long time ago. I bought it probably maybe about a year ago, and I'm working through my pile, and I really enjoyed that. I It was different perspective. It was still cozy. It's interesting because it's kind of a cozy, but it's not. So
Mhm.
I really like that. I'm reading right now. What is it called? I wrote it down. It was Agatha Christie's, I think, first mystery with Perot. It's the Mysterious Affair at Styles. So
Oh,
that's very interesting. I don't have you ever read? I didn't grow up. So I this is again, this is a confession. I did not read Agatha Christie, and now that I write cozy mysteries, everybody talks about Agatha Christie, and I feel like I should read her, and she's very interesting. Um, yeah, so it's been a lot of fun just discovering those books. I have one that I just recently read from another Kensington author that does have a ghost in it. It's called, I don't know, can you say, There'll Be Shell to Pay. It was adorable, and where she, so what Molly McRae does is that her ghost helps her solve. He's like a real big presence in her life, which I thought was very fun because I really hadn't read anything like that in a cozy. I, you know, usually stick to other things, but I really enjoyed that. I think that that's the second book in the series. So, there's so many good books. Yeah,
yeah.
those are the three that recently.
I read the first in that Molly McRae series. I
Okay,
have the second, haven't gotten to the second yet. And she was actually interviewed. She was my second interview for this season. So
oh,
we
good.
got
Oh,
to
she's
talk about it. Yeah.
adorable.
Yeah.
And I did book signing with her. We were in Lansing and we were talking, and during our book signing, and we found out that we grew up in the same town.
Wow.
She goes, "Where in Illinois did you live?" And I go, "Well, you probably wouldn't know about it." And I told her, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, I grew up there too, and I knew the street. She knew it crazy."
That is
And so I was
crazy.
like, "Isn't that fun?" And we both write about ghosts.
That's so
Must be
funny.
something about our town.
And did you live there at the same time? Like, would you have gone to school together or?
She's a little older, so no. Yeah. So, but she told me a great story too. She went back to her house, and she grew up in a big farmhouse in this small town called Barrington, Illinois. And she and her sister had recently gone back as adults to this house, and it's just changed. And she knocked. They got the courage up to knock on the door, and the woman who owns it opened it, and they said, we grew up in this house, and so they were so happy to take them around the house. Well, she found out that the house, there was a fire in the house recently. and they had cleaned the house out, and they said, "Oh, we found something in the attic when we were cleaning the house out." And they brought down this painting, and her mother had made the painting. Now her mother had passed, and so her and her sister like just started crying, and I'm like, "Oh, that is the painting that their mother had painted when they were children, put it up in the attic, forgot about it, and all these years later." So that to me is magic too. Like, isn't that
Yeah,
just incredible? So
that's
that's,
incredible.
yeah. So it was a wonderful story. So
Oh, that's so
really
great.
cool.
Do you have any new projects that you'd like to share or promote?
The second Food and Spirits will be coming out in, I think it comes out January 27th, and it's so much fun. So this time I get to go to Scotland. So I knew I always wanted to set a novel at a haunted castle in Scotland. So this one is going to be called A Spirited Supper at Dundoon Castle, and it involves a like the ghost of a Scottish bagpiper. It's a true story. I did change the name of the castle to protect the innocent because people really live in this castle. So it's a really cool legend, and I go all in on Scottish bagpipes, and it's going to be the ghost investigation of the team of Food Spirits. Is going to be doing this during a bagpipe competition. So there's a lot of a lot of bad bagpipe jokes. So that's, it'll be a lot of fun. And then I have another Beacon Bake Shop coming out also next year. I didn't have anything this year,
Mhm.
um, due to some personal, like I did death in the family. So Mike Kensington cleared my schedule. God bless them. They're wonderful. And so I'll have a lot coming up next year. So
Next year in
I have
2027.
I think the next Beacon Bake Shop is called Murder at the Campfire Cookout, and it's set
Hmm.
in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Beautiful place, very remote. It was a lot of fun writing it.
Excellent. And how can our listeners find you?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram under Darci Hannah or author Darci Hannah, or at my website www.darcihannah's DARCI Hannah, just like another girl's name, HANNAH.com.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Darcy, for being on the podcast today and for talking with me.
Oh, thank you for hosting me, and thank you so much. It was my pleasure. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, wonderful
Thank
day.
you. You too.
Thanks.